So segueing on to our next topic of changes to the police since the Macphearson reports in 1997. Off the back of Stephen Lawrence, for those who don't know, 1993, Stephen Lawrence, a black teenager who was targeted by a white gang on the basis of his skin. He was waiting to get a bus. He got stabbed. His friends managed to run away, but he couldn't be saved. There's been lots of changes to the police since then. One example is that the law of double jeopardy has been scrapped. So two of the killers who were part of that gang killed Stephen Lawrence in 1993. They were arrested in 2012, long way later. In your eyes, as a long-serving officer, how has the police changed kind of since the start of your career to like where we are today?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, and in the same way, I guess that other sectors will have changed massively. Our use of technology, but also far more awareness of the communities that we're policing and the sensitivities around that, and also, I mean, even things I've mentioned already, things like unconscious bias training.
Sure.
Has been, phenomenal.
Right.
The death of Stephen Lawrence and the kind of immediate police investigation was just a complete cock up, wasn't it? I mean, it's that's well documented by almost anyone who's ever looked at it has said that's a complete cluster.
Yeah.
So I think it was only right that a number of changes have come out of that, and the way that we respond to some of those incidents and situations now is vastly different to that which when I joined. So I joined back in 1994, a very different way, and even the use of language. So I can remember that I used to say to people something like, "Oh, it's right. There's nothing to worry about. This is just a routine stop check."
Sure.
Well, there's no such thing as a routine stop check. What does that mean?
Sure.
What words am I using there, and what do they actually mean?
Sure.
But then also the fact that we wouldn't complete paperwork and complete stop search paperwork if I said to you, "Oh, can you just turn your pockets out there, chap?
Yeah.
Can you just see what I've got?" So I'm not physically using my hands to do it.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not using a power to do it, because
Your authority.
I'm telling you in a position of authority to do it, and therefore you do it. I would then, back then, say that was compliant stop check, and I didn't use any powers, and you emptied your pockets. Because I said to you, "Hey JP, can you empty your pockets?" And you said, "Yeah, sure," and took your stuff out your pockets.
Right.
I'm stood there in a police uniform, with cuffs, baton, spray, etc.
Sure.
In a position of authority.
I'm not going to say no, am I?
Exactly. Well, if you say no, it's then cuffs on, and I'll do it myself then.
Sure.
And you can see how that would just go completely incorrectly. And as I mentioned, the use of language. So what I used to mean by this is a routine stop check is that kind of trying to put someone at ease and say, look, there's nothing to worry about. It's 2:30 in the morning. We're in southeast Cornwall, because that's where I was at the time.
Okay.
Back in 1994, there would have been bits of tumbleweed blowing down the A38 at night, because no one, there wasn't the same volume of lorries and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And there would be no one. I could sit out on the A38 for hours.
Yeah.
At least an hour waiting for a vehicle to go past.
Oh,
there was just no one out and about. And then if you did find someone, perhaps it was someone from the big city of Plymouth who had ventured over and was trying to steal a quad bike or something.
Sure.
So that they would be an obvious target, because they were about the only vehicle that I'd see for hours on end.
Right. So changes to what the modern society inevitably leads to changes to the police to try and keep up with this physical changes in.
So I think that as a result of kind of going back to the Macphearson report, there were some of our processes, obviously, which didn't really work and were institutionally racist. That there were things that society that we built our processes on within society, which was a predominantly white society, perhaps when that was originally written, or it was written by a white government predominantly and a white House of Lords, and that actually there was bits of bias written into it without us really realising it was there.
Sure.
So assumptions were made, and I think that we are now far more aware of that and the requirement for understanding our communities better. Even the fact that we do equality impact assessments on things, that we may have an idea that we are going to close all police station front offices. Okay, so that may be a really good idea because actually not that many people come in, but those people that do come in, who are they then? What? So assuming that everyone can use IT to report stuff to the police.
Sure.
Well, that's a huge assumption that a vast number of that everyone in society has got access to the internet. As we've seen during lockdown, loads of young people and kids in education haven't been able to do lots of online learning because they haven't got access to IT.
Sure.
So looking at a concept of what if we make all of our police cars green, what impact would that have?
Sure.
Would it affect some bits of the community more than others? And then conducting that equality impact assessment and see if there are mitigating factors that we can put in, or actually that it was just a really silly idea and we're not going to do it.
Okay.
I think that is such a positive thing that has come about. I used to be involved in restorative justice, and looking at an equality impact assessment about how we would use restorative justice in the community was a really good opportunity to have people comment critically and asking for critical comment and kind of doing the 360-degree feedback, that sort of concept.
Well, for those who don't know, 'cause we used it at my school. I was in London. We had someone who was like a restorative justice officer. Would you like to explain what is restorative justice to people that might not have heard that term before?
Yeah, and I would definitely suggest looking at it after you've finished watching this. Obviously, this is far more important.
Yeah.
But so restorative justice is where the victim and the offender have an opportunity to get together, a bit like this,
Sure.
and talk about what happened. So if I had broken into your house, you would have an opportunity and are afforded an opportunity now within the Victims Code to meet the burglar and have a conversation and say, Sketch, what's all that about?
Sure.
Had you been watching my house for the last million years, which is what people often think, or what were the circumstances, and actually the vast majority of people are just opportunists. They're walking past, they push the front door, you didn't lock it properly, I come in and liberate your iPad and your phone and things. Unfortunately, it's that simple. We all make mistakes. We forget to lock things. We forget to shut the windows, especially when it's so hot and all that sort of stuff. So restorative justice is about the victim and the offender getting together and having a conversation and putting right some of the harm that's been caused. Now, that may not mean that I can physically replace all the kit, but it may mean that I can put your mind at rest, that I hadn't been targeting you, that it was just an opportunist thing, and actually for me to apologise if that's appropriate. Now, that's not always appropriate. It's not just about saying sorry, and it doesn't necessarily mean, and it shouldn't necessarily mean, that there's no formal outcome, because clearly if I've broken into your house, irrespective of my job, then maybe I should go to prison. But I should end up with a formal criminal justice outcome. Equally, if I'm a 12-year-old lad, and you're also a 12-year-old lad, and we've had a bit of a bust up because there was this lush girl and we both thought that we both wanted to go out with her or whatever, and then we had a fight and I injured you, do I necessarily need to end up with some formal criminal justice outcome which could have very long lasting and far reaching effects for the rest of my life and my opportunities, as it would for you? Would it be appropriate for us to get together and chat about it and explain where we were coming from, try and understand each other? So I had some training a long time ago, which is linked to restorative justice. So I'm not going off on
Yeah.
another tangent.
Yeah.
So if you've got something like an apple, your side of the apple that you're looking at may be red and quite rosy, but my side may be a bit green.
Okay.
So if I'm asking you to describe it, you'll be saying, "Wow, it's lovely shiny
It's
red,"
red.
and I'm looking at it going, "It's not, mate. That's green."
Sure.
What I need to do in order to understand is to come to your side and try and understand things from your perspective, what you were looking at. And then you need to come around to my side and see it from my perspective. So we're both describing the same thing, but our views on it are so fundamentally different.
I mean, that just there, that analogy that can be used for society right now, because I don't know about you, but I feel on these topics, but other worldly topics right now, people are very polarized, and it's either you believe this or you believe that. And again, you just go on YouTube and you type in a question about whatever, and you see two people shouting their opinions at each other, and there's no conversation and dialogue, which is kind of why I feel the importance of doing what we're doing now and having a discussion for me to talk about my red side of my apple and you to talk about your green side, and to just maybe think, oh, maybe the apple is a bit green, or maybe you think it's a bit red.
And all I can do is talk about policing from my perspective, but your understanding and concepts of policing are going to be different, aren't they? So actually, this opportunity to get together and not be fearful of it and just say, "Oh, I've never thought of that. Yeah, never thought of that before."
Exactly.
Or I didn't know that would even be a thing. Then I go away as a better cop, or you go away as a reassured member of the public that actually we don't do racial profiling, or that we don't, that things have improved vastly since Macphearson. All of those kind of things that actually may reassure you, because if we're only driven by some of what we see in the media, there can be reasons for spinning stuff in the media. 100%. No one ever sells newspapers and media stories based on good news. There's loads of clickbait. No one's interested in that. It's when we get it wrong. It's when we find that a teacher has been abusing loads of kids, and we're like, "Oh, well, there you are." I knew that all teachers were paedophiles. It's like, sorry. In the same way, though, that we then end up with, all police officers pick on black people. No, they don't. Well, there are one or two really visible and very embarrassing, horrific examples where people have got it hugely wrong, but they shouldn't be in police any more than
teachers or whatever they do wrong, for sure. And I think that's key. I think making assumptions does ourselves a huge disservice and is miseducating ourselves. It's myself just trying to prep for this chat today, I've found out things I didn't know before, and I think for anybody to feel there are experts on any of these topics and feel they have what you need to talk about it or to research further or to read more books about it, I think you're only fooling yourselves, you're not fooling another person.
Oh yeah,
I think that's massive.
And we've all got to learn, and as a parent as well, one of the best ways to learn is unfortunately through making mistakes.
Definitely.
And you've only got to look at some of the inventions that we've got where they've had a disaster like 100 times, and then they eventually get to the one, and that's the one that then takes off and it works and it's brilliant and it becomes something amazing, like a particular brand of vacuum cleaner or a particular concept of doing it just completely differently.
It's like Michael Jordan. So again, looking lots of YouTube at the moment, and there's a documentary about his life on Netflix recently as well. But this very short motivational video said Michael Jordan, known as one of the best ever basketball players in the world, he made something like 140 game-winning shots. Last seconds of the game, he's got the ball, 1 second left, he's taking a shot, he's won the game for the Bulls. What they don't show you as often is that he missed a rough number, but a lot more than he made. So he's missed, let's just say, 550 game-winning shots, where he's tried to win the game, but his shot has led to the team losing. Now, obviously, that's not great for his team, but people don't remember that side of things. People remember the good bits.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that, I think the moral of that story is that by making mistakes and the process of learning from mistakes is going to see change and see things improve.
Yeah, yeah. And I think genuinely that is what has occurred through the Macphearson report and subsequent ones, that it is only by having those opportunities to reflect on what occurred when we got it wrong. And we only ever tend to review the stuff that didn't go very well. So we end up with serious case reviews because a child has died with their parents or something, or we've got a serious case review because someone who was known to probation has then gone and committed some horrific offence. But you know, what opportunities did we miss? What went wrong? It's all our fault, etc. We tend not to review all those success stories because that's not that's also not where the learning necessarily comes from. Even though there will be stuff in that went incorrectly and actually but we got away with it, or it didn't have the same cataclysmic outcomes. So having that opportunity to learn from your mistakes is absolutely key. What's important is, particularly when you've got a huge structure like policing, it can take a very long time for a big organisation to change. So yes, our training has changed beyond recognition around some of the stuff we've been talking about, but that takes time. And I think sometimes people expect it to occur immediately. And even if you think about a massive organisation like, I don't know, like Tesco, if they suddenly decided to change their logo, it will take them months to change it all the way through every store, every bit of kit, every lorry, every truck.
Websites.
Absolutely. So it takes time. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes the same is true of policing. It takes a long time for us to kind of catch up with where we know we need to be.
Fair enough. All right,